Hey everybody, this is your GM, your back row dominance, your hopium dealer, your GM who currently is not on the team right now, but don't you worry about it, Kale, here to bring you episode 11 of the Stack and Shed series. Now, in this series, we're covering all 32 teams, so everybody gets a chance to be talked about, all right? Now, in this series, we're covering a few different topics, and they include what went wrong, what do they need, stack or shed, their draft picks, one move I would do in their cap space. All right. Now, in this episode, we're going to the dirty south. All right. We're stopping by the Trill Burgers. We're stopping by the Screw Shop. We're stopping by a few different landmarks in H Town. All right. We're getting ourselves a couple things to get ourselves acquainted with the culture and everything because we're talking about the Texans. All right. So make sure you guys go to Buc-ee's and get yourself and me a t-shirt. Get us some brisket, get us some chips, get us some snacks, because we got a lot to cover with this team. So let's lock in. All right, let's get into it. So what went wrong in the Texans season? And I will venture to say it was regressing quarterback play. Going into last season, I had a lot of questions about CJ Stroud due in part to his regression that we have seen within the last few years. And this isn't the type of regression that only former players or coaches or former offensive coordinators or people who've been around the sport of football can only see. This is the type of regression that everyone can see. He's not throwing the ball like how he used to. He's not executing the plays like how he used to. He hasn't been super consistent. When comparing CJ Stroud from 2024 to 2025, this is what you have according to Sumer Sports. So in 2024, CJ Stroud was 532 passing attempts for 336 completions, 3,727 passing yards, 219.2 passing yards per game, 7 yards per attempt, 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, a 63.2% completion percentage. Now in that season, they made it to the playoffs, and these are his stats. He was 41 for 51, which is 67.2%, 527 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and 8.6 yards per attempt. Now, when you look at his stats this past season, this is what we have. 423 passing attempts for 273 completions, 3,041 passing yards, 217.2 passing yards per game, 7.1 yards per attempt, 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and a 64.5% completion percentage. Now, when you look at his playoff stats, it's actually really bad. 41 for 79, which is 51.9%, 462 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and 5.8 yards per attempt. Now, I'm not saying that CJ Stroud needs to be in the same stratosphere as a Burrow or a Allen or a Lamar or Mahomes, but CJ Stroud has the talent to be a really good quarterback. And in the past few years, we have not seen that in CJ Stroud. And there's nobody that he can point the finger at but himself. Going into the playoffs last season, the Texans were primed to go on a crazy run. Their first opponent was the Steelers, a Steelers team that hobbled themselves into the playoffs. And for a majority of the game, it was the Texans defense that was keeping the game close. Then your next opponent was the Patriots, a Patriots offense that wasn't playing their best ball. And you mean to tell me you wasn't able to capitalize off of the defensive plays and try to put some points on the board? Now, I wasn't expecting CJ Stroud to just light it up for 4 quarters straight, but what I was expecting was for CJ Stroud to capitalize every single time the defense put them in a great field position. But that's not what we saw. Instead, we saw a quarterback that looked like a deer in headlights. Understand this, my fellow football junkies. It is the playoffs that defines a quarterback's career, not the regular season. Jared Goff looks fine in the regular season, but when he gets to the playoffs, he folds. But guess what? When Mahomes gets into the playoffs, he is a completely different beast. Tom Brady can struggle the entire regular season, but if he gets into the playoffs, it is hell to pay for any team that has to face him, regardless if it's home or away. That's what defines who you are. And so far, what can we say about CJ Stroud in the playoffs? What can we say about CJ Stroud in the regular season? Because everything that I have to say about him really isn't that good. And I know that he has the potential to do it. You just have to put it together. Now, I'm not saying this was a Super Bowl roster, but this was the closest thing to it. This should have been the year that you would have went on that run. Because at that time, guess what? Mahomes was in the playoffs. Lamar was in the playoffs. Justin Herbert was in the playoffs. It was wide open for you. The only team that was a true threat in the playoffs for the AFC was the Broncos. So the only thing that you had to worry about was the defense. And as long as you kept the defense in check, you had a legitimate chance. And that's not what we saw. We saw somebody that folded under pressure when the team needed him the most. And that's not what you need in a quarterback. You need your quarterback to elevate their play when all the pressure is on their shoulders. And you can't say the Texans haven't done their job because they've surrounded you with endless weapons. You have a really good receiving core. You have a productive tight end. You just got David Montgomery. They just signed Braden Smith. They just signed Wyatt Teller. You have everything that you need to be successful. All you have to do is just deliver. If you made it to the AFC Championship this past season, nobody would say anything about you. But because you guys failed to make it to that point, and because you guys failed to capitalize on a year where Patrick Mahomes was not in the playoffs, now everybody is looking at you asking the question, is CJ Stroud the franchise guy, or is he just the bridge for somebody else to come in? Now, with that being said, what do the Texans need? And that is more consistency from CJ Stroud. I don't know if they need to bring in somebody to just refine CJ Stroud. I don't know what it is. But whatever the Texans need to do to maximize CJ Stroud's potential, do it at this point. Because this is a very loaded roster. And this roster can go to the Super Bowl. All they need is for CJ Stroud to get his act together. As long as CJ Stroud can play to where he's either the best or the second best quarterback in his division and maybe the 10th or 15th best quarterback in the AFC, I think the Texans have a chance. But if he fails to reach that point, then we need to have an honest conversation about CJ Stroud. Especially with next year coming up where everybody is saying there's supposed to be a robust amount of quarterbacks that are going to be available. And we also have to remember that the Texans have a major financial decision that they have to make with CJ Stroud because they either have to pick up his fifth-year option or they're going to have to pay him $60+ million a year. And at this point, I would venture to say the Texans are probably going to let this thing play out all the way to the end. Now, with that being said, the question we all need to ask ourselves is stack or shed. And I would venture to say stack. And the reason why I say that is because this is a very loaded roster. I would venture to say this is the best roster in their division. You have all the things that you need in order for this team to be successful and to go on a long playoff run, maybe even go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. All you need is for CJ Stroud to elevate his play. If you can play like how Sam Darnold played last season, that is enough for the team to make it to the Super Bowl. Because Sam Darnold wasn't spectacular last season. Sam Darnold really didn't start cooking until he made it into the playoffs. If you don't believe me, look at the stats. The stats don't lie, the play don't lie, the tape don't lie. All right. Now, with that being said, when we look at their draft picks, they have their first, they have 2 seconds, a third, 2 fourths, 2 fifths, and a seventh. Now, we all know the Texans GM loves to be fluid when it comes to the draft. Sometimes he'll trade up, sometimes he'll trade down, sometimes he'll trade away some picks to get a player. He likes to do it all. All right. But the question is this. Do you believe there is a position of need on your team right now that requires you to be aggressive and trade up? Or do you feel complacent on how your roster is right now and you can trade down? And speaking of that, the one move that I would do is entertain trading out of the first round. And the reason why I say that is because this draft class isn't a draft class where you need to take somebody in the first round. Instead, this is a draft class that you can see how the board falls and you can trade out of the first round and still get a high quality player. The Broncos have been looking for a high quality wide receiver, and this is a wide receiver class that's really good. But they said, you know what? We want the proven talent over the potential talent. And that makes sense. So if you're the Texans, I would trade out of the first round. I would play around in the second and third round. Maybe use the fourth or fifth round to, add some depth and maybe some competition for certain positions. And then I would just go from there. Because at this point, what do you really need on this roster? You have Will Anderson. You have Danielle Hunter. You have your quarterback for now. You have your wide receivers. You have your running back. You have your offensive line. The only position that I would say the Texans probably need to address is interior defensive line. But even then, there's not a lot of high quality prospects that they can go after. Unless you go after Caleb Banks, unless you go after Dale Jackson, unless you go after Dante Corleone, or you make a move for Lee Hunter, there's no need for you to allocate a first round pick on a defensive tackle, especially when you know that some of these defensive tackles may fall. There's a good chance that Caleb Banks may fall because he has a fracture in his foot. There's a good chance that Lee Hunter may just be a high-end second-round pick. There's a good chance that Dante Corleone, Daryl Jackson, Zane Durant, and all those defensive linemen may still be available in day 2 and day 3 of the draft. And I want to put y'all on game real quick. There's a lot of teams right now that are preparing for the 27 draft class because a lot of people believe that the 27 draft class is going to be another spectacular draft class because you have people such as Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, Lenore Sellers, Archie Manning possibly. So really think about this for a second. If you're the Texans, it's better for you to just trade down, recoup some picks for this draft class as well as the 27 draft class to position yourself to make a major move if you want to do it in 27 or in 26 at the trade deadline instead of just taking somebody that you're really not high on in the first round. Looking at the Texans cap situation, they have $28.5 million. Now that number can fluctuate a little bit because we all know they're going to pay Will Anderson and we all know that they're probably going to save a lot of that money for the draft. But my question is this: if you're the Texans, do you try to be players in that second and third wave of free agency? Because there's a lot of notable players that are still available. You can go after a Cam Jordan if you want to. You can go after a Deebo Samuel. You can go after a Jawan Jennings. You have a lot of options, but only time will tell. But I'm in this episode here. If you guys like what you're listening, please make sure you guys leave a 5-star review on anywhere and everywhere that you can listen to this podcast, okay? We're available on Apple, Spotify, and a few other places. Now, if you want to access those other places, go on Google, type in rss.com Football Junkies Podcast. It should be the first link. When you click on that link, it'll take you to our rss.com page where you can listen to this podcast on your online browser. Now, there's a box that says listen to. When you click on that box, it'll give you a plethora of different places that you can listen to this podcast on, all right? Now, for my YouTube people, like, share, subscribe, turn the notification bell on, leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on this episode and any other content that I have posted out. Am I right? Am I wrong? Let's talk about it, all right? Now, you can follow us on YouTube at Football Junkies Pod, all right? Football Junkies Pod. Now remember, we have a link tree in our bio. When you click on that link tree, it'll take you to anywhere and everywhere that we have Football Junkies content, all right? Now you can follow us on Instagram at Football_Junkies Pod. Football_Junkies Pod. Junkies Pod is not what? It is together, not spaced, okay? It is together, not spaced. Football_Junkies Pod, all right? You can follow us on TikTok at Football Junkies Pod. Football Junkies Pod. Now, for all my TikTok people, remember, I cannot post the link to the new episode on TikTok. So if I were you, I would follow us on our Instagram, on our Blue Sky, or follow us on our YouTube page. And speaking of Blue Sky, you can follow me there at GMKale. G as in good, M as in morning, Kale. Kaile. Kaile. You can follow me on Twitter at GMKale. G as in good, M as in morning, Kaile. All right. As always, I hope I gave you guys the fix that you guys need. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for listening to the best football podcast that you can listen to on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis. And as always, this is your GM Kale signing out. Peace and love. Later, guys.